Well, I'm super happy to have with me today Doron Meyassed. I hope I got that right, from the Plum Guide. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. I did see you a couple of years ago at the Host 2019 conference, but it was very, very brief. I'm sure you will not remember it at all. A lot of things have happened since then.
They have. Thanks for having me.
Yes, there's that little thing called coronavirus came in very shortly after that conference. I swear I got on that aeroplane after that conference and I came home and I had the most appalling virus for about 3 weeks and I lost my sense of taste and smell. I actually think I was ground zero for Ontario. But anyway, that was a lot of water under the bridge. And we're going to talk today about your company that you founded. Talking about founded and being a founder, something you just told me about your name. Can you just share that?
My family name, my surname Meyassed, means founder in Hebrew. And Israelis will often think it's a joke or a kind of just thing that I write after my name. But Meyassed means a founder, and that's genuinely my
I
family name.
love that. I love that. So it's Doron the founder, the founder. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about the origin of the Plum Guide. How did you get into this business, and where did you start?
So the origin of this business, most origin ideas or most origin stories start with a negative experience. Mine started with a particularly good one. And when I used to be a hardcore Airbnb user, for every occasion I would stay in people's homes. And we did a trip actually to Tel Aviv with some friends at the time. We booked a place. It was meant to be a casual trip. It was our third choice, because the first two often they get rejected. They got rejected. Low expectations. We show up at this place and it is incredible. 10 times better than the pictures, overlooking the sea, made of all Jaffa stone. The owner would put fresh produce in the fridge every day. And I got talking to the owner, and I'd worked with hoteliers before, and he was more inspiring than some of the best hoteliers I'd ever met. I'd say to him stuff like, in the evenings we have great conversations in your living room. And he'd go, yeah, you know why? Because the secret to a good living room is cocooning. And he's sort of right. Seating environments that are cocooned are far more conducive to conversations. It's why people spend longer in restaurant booths than they do in chairs. It has a kind of cocooned environment. And that got me thinking, what is this guy? Are there more of him laying in the depth of Airbnb and what was at the time Home Away? And if so, why can't I tell from the reviews? I'm an OCD researcher. I use spreadsheets to plan my holidays. I should be able to tell. And so maybe a month after that, I took a week off and went to meet hosts in London, Berlin, and Paris, who I believed were these craftspeople. And at the end of that week, I decided that my calling was to make Plum happen. I believe that in the depth of these platforms lie these incredible experience makers who cared about every piece of furniture, the art, the choice of bedding, and they were really hard to identify. And so that was the vision of the business, and the mission changed over time, but that was the spark that got us excited about doing it.
I love that. I love that. In the introduction, I'd mentioned that when I started in the business back in the early 2000s, it was the nature of cottage rental here in Ontario, that as long as it had four walls, a ceiling, and some indoor plumbing, it was going to be great. But then expectations were much, much lower then.
Yeah.
People were actually happy to have four walls, a ceiling, and some indoor plumbing. And
Yeah.
if they got a TV with rabbit ears, then they were ecstatic. But we know how much expectations have changed.
Yeah. And
Um,
they continue to rise.
yeah, so I'm going to go cover that in a minute, but there's a lot of people talking about luxury now. Everybody has a luxury rental site. So what makes the Plum Guide different? But having said that, before that, can you just tell me why you called it the Plum Guide?
Well, originally we wanted to call it Plum, and it has multiple connotations. Plum job is a way of saying that something is done very well. In a plum in the, let's call it, old school architecture, and is this piece of metal that you hang from a string.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way of telling you whether something is straight, a bit like an old school spirit level. And so this idea of like perfection and making sure that it, makes sense and so on. But then we couldn't acquire plum.com. So we went for, the guide of the best homes in any city. That was the kind of idea.
I love that because I hadn't thought about Plum, Plumb,
Yeah.
when I was thinking about that. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what Plum actually meant in terms of a product. So that's great. So let's go back to that question. What makes you different from other luxury rental sites? Because there's a lot of them appearing now.
Yeah, look, so our North Star, first of all, and before I answer your question, our North Star is our guest. We think of our target market as the discerning traveler. We are very clear about who that is. I mean, they tend to be urban dwellers living in London, New York, LA, Rome, Milan, big into design, relatively well off. And our obsession is to build the ultimate booking experience, stay experience for that group. So at the core, that's what we're up to. On a very practical level today, there are really three things we obsess about for this group. And I think what make Plum different. And really, they are the three pain points we see for that group, which is, identifying the good quality stuff, consistent quality, service, and better matching with the right home. So on the quality front, what makes us different is that we vet every home that comes on the Plum platform. They have to pass 150 criteria to get onto the site. If you book it, the beds will always be great. There will always be properly stocked kitchens. The rooms will be quiet. Very obsessive criteria around that. The second thing that makes us different is you can reach a customer service help at the touch of a button. We have two teams, one that helps you to book a home and choose a home, and one that helps you if anything goes wrong during your stay and you can't get hold of someone from the homeowner, or you're not happy with the result you're getting. These teams are all based in London, New York, and Hong Kong. We're all sat in the same space. They really care about the experience. And the third thing that makes Plum different is we obsess about managing expectations or being sort of radically transparent. So I'll give you one example. We have a section on our listings called the Home Truths, and we list everything that's bad about the home. So you will find a £4 million apartment or dollar apartment in Paris, and it will say the floorboards are creaky, the fourth bedroom is windowless, and it's like a laundry list. People are often shocked when they look at that and they go, gosh, but so we're always looking for ways of doing that. So what really makes us different, the most important, is that we vet every home. We reject 96% roughly of homes we look at. And so as a customer that if you book Plum, it's one of the best in the region and that it meets all the basic criteria.
Yeah, a question that, because you sort of fall between conventional property manager and listing site, and you're sort of somewhere in the middle. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the kind of high-end property manager and us, we're trying to solve a very similar problem, which is, high quality experiences in a tricky space. And the most traditional way of solving that problem is kind of vertical integration, manage the home, welcome the guest, own the sheets. Our view of it is we're taking a different approach. We believe we can deliver as good, sometimes substantially better experience by using curation, OCD curation, if you like, rather than vertical integration. So by being exceptionally strict on what is in or out. And by the way, we'll often work with some of our partners who are exceptional experience makers. Every home is amazing, but we'll still only take 40% of their homes. And we can afford to do that. It's our luxury. It's very tough if you're trying to have a collection in Milan to reject so many homes, because you need density and so on and so forth. So that's kind of, we're solving a similar challenge in a different way.
Yeah, how do you resolve the human factor? And that's definitely something that, it came to my mind when I was looking through the Plum Guide, and yes, you can curate this art, the comfort, the bedding, but what about the people, the ones that are delivering the hospitality, those owners? Because I know after 20 years, and over 20 years, we probably managed 600-700 properties over that time, and 600 or 700 different owners. And there were times when we get the most amazing home, but the owner just did not match up to it. And it wasn't until we'd had it for a short while that we realized that, we hadn't evaluated that owner as best we could. How do you do that?
Well, look, it's changed over time. In the early days, and it can still form a core part of it, a core element was someone walking into the house, and two things. One is noticing, and we train our team in noticing the small details. And this maybe sounds crazy, but a very niche example is, I think that by looking at a bookshelf in a house, you have a pretty good stab at telling how thoughtful and considerate and attentive an owner or a welcomer might be. So training the team to notice these things, and also interviewing, asking the host in their case, why do you do this? What do you enjoy the most? What do you find tricky? And looking for passion. And of course, having perfected that and spent so long on it, we still get it wrong. So we let go of, so if you look at our churn of supply, so the people who leave Plum every year, more than half of that is us letting go of people. And if you have 2 scores on Plum, on a customer feedback form that are 6 or under, the home gets removed. No ifs, no buts. So we often frustrated to remove a beautiful home, and the reason why it happens is because it's not foolproof. We still get it wrong. It's not a perfect thing.
Yeah, I appreciate your transparency on that because, yeah, it was. I always remember taking on this most beautiful architect-designed home, and it was the architects that owned it. It was their home, and they were so proud of this home, and it was just perfect in every way. It was our flagship property, and they were the worst owners we ever had.
Did they interact with the guests?
They interacted way too much with the guests. Yes. I mean, they would drop in to fix a tap or fix something that they felt was not quite right, and then stay for lunch. And then we'd get a call from the guests saying they're still here. Should I be inviting them to dinner as well?
I mean, look, it's a familiar problem actually, because it's a fine line between being, a great host and being someone who kind of blurs that boundary. And I think we've got a lot braver over the years to say it doesn't matter how much of a masterpiece it is.
Yes.
And there's also something, where, so if you read our listings, we produce the listing, and so when you read the home truths, it's a very powerful way for us to manage expectations. So you'll read a home that'll say something like, we almost didn't accept this home because the design wasn't very soulful, but for this part of town at this price, it is one of the best you will find. It's very hard to say we almost didn't accept this home because the owner is very intrusive. So you have to make a more difficult decision, I think.
Yes, yeah, it's a tough one. Let's go back to the experience that people are having across the board in the short-term rental industry, in the short-term rental market, because despite all the 5 stars that you see on Airbnb and the 4.8, 4.9 and 5 stars, people are still having disappointments. And I know from personal experience that the last 5 properties I stayed in were disappointing. Why do you feel so many travelers are disappointed in their choice of accommodation?
Oh, let me tackle this from a couple of angles. First of all, the bit that we can't control. There's a great talk, you've probably seen it in a book by Alain de Botton on travel, and he talks about this thing where we go on holiday, we idealize what's going to happen, so we think of ourselves going away, and suddenly everything disappears. We're spontaneous again. We're great lovers. We connect with our children. And then we're sat on the plane and we forget this very annoying fact that we are coming with us. So our neuroses and our madness is all showing up, and that creates frustration. I think that happens in travel. I think you project so much fantasy into it, and there's the reality of frustrations of life. So I think that's something that you can do some stuff about, but is always there. Expectations are high in travel. But on a very practical level, I see 2 big problems. I think the review system is broken. 95% of homes on Airbnb have 4.5 stars or more. In my mind, reviews are very effective at getting rid of the bad, but terrible at surfacing the exceptional. In the early days of Plum, I went out and I tried the number 1 restaurant in, I can't remember now, 7 or 8 neighborhoods in London on TripAdvisor. And none of them was exceptional. They were all incredible value. In all of them, when the food arrived, I was like, wow, I get this much food for my money. But I don't think that the wisdom of crowds, the averages, surfaces the exceptional. There's if 95% have 4.5 stars or more, where are you differentiating here? So I don't think it works. And the second thing is, I don't think the system for matching guests with the right home for them is very strong. In a typical marketplace, the owner writes the listing. The owner says this is great for families, for people who want to, for young people, it's just great. And the reality is that's not what it's like. And I think that the effort into turning off people who won't have a good time there is poor. And I'm a big believer, I think when we look at how customers used to be helped to make good decisions, it went from a kind of complete deferral to authority. So, the olden, like what the church recommended, or but then it was like the Michelin guide, which are exceptional experts telling you what is a good restaurant. And it just we went completely the other way. It's the wisdom of crowds. The authority knows nothing. And I think there's a kind of a return somewhere in the middle where you use a mix of experts who vet the home, who are armed by consumer intelligence. That's kind of what I see the future of that space.
Yeah, exactly. Let's continue on this guest review theme, because you don't have any reviews on the Plum Guide. Is that right?
That's right. So we don't have any public reviews. There's two reasons for that. The first and most important one is when we investigated why in all these platforms, 95% of homes, 90%, they all have a similar stat, are 4.5 stars or more. One of the biggest reasons we got back is that there is a real sense of reciprocity from the reviewer. They're not reviewing a big corporate brand often. They are reviewing, a small company. They meet the person who greets them. It's happened to me. It's happened to me in the earlier days where I booked a place. The person didn't show up for 4 hours and we waited around, and then she showed up and she had some issue with her child, and it was like, I'm not going to give this person a bad review. It's a kind of, we ask customers for feedback. We tell them that it won't be shared directly with the owner until it's anonymized with a bunch more. And we ask them, tell us 3 things you loved about the home, 3 things you didn't like about the home. Which customer would like staying here? Which kind of customer would hate staying here? And that gives us such powerful, rich data to be able to tell the other guests the home truths, put off people who might not like it. And also people are a lot more honest. So that's really the main reason. The secondary reason is that we have this idea that people, it's an abusive relationship we have with reviews. People spend hours reading them, but no one enjoys it. And you're kind of like, oh, maybe the next one will decipher something. And if we could free people from that and say, look, if it's got the Plum mark, it is one of the best you'll get for your money. Here's everything that's negative about the place. That's the vision. I don't think we've succeeded in that yet. I think the use of reviews is so ingrained that every time we speak to customers, they ask for reviews. So, it's always a debate.
I remember the time before reviews, before Flipkey developed this live review system, and I remember us all going, "Oh my gosh, we can't have this. We can't have a live review," and then look at it today.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of home truths to actually not have, you don't have any negative reviews, but you're upfront with exactly what somebody might say if they made past a negative opinion.
Yeah, because it's one of my favorite places on Plum in London is in Shoreditch. It's down the road from our office. It's, in my eyes, one of the most incredible warehouses, a warehouse conversion. My parents would think it's abhorrent, and they are Plum customers as well. And so I think it really, even if you select the best homes, helping people understand that and see that quickly, that this is not for you is one of the keys to having a good experience.
So you're talking about matchmaking, and you've got this staff who actually matchmake, and so you wanting to speak with potential guests and find out what their expectations are, what their wants, needs, desires, dreams are, and you've got staff who actually do that. That's got to be time consuming.
Yeah, definitely. For what it's, again, our North Star is this audience. We keep hearing from them how nice it is to just download their needs onto someone, and that's someone do the heavy lifting. The origins of that is when we started Plum, I was vehemently against doing this. We're a tech company. And in the end, the economics are far better for a customer who speaks to us. It's between 3 and 4x is our conversion rate, which means it cuts what we have to pay Google for a customer by $100, $150, and it costs us less than $100, $150 to service the guest. And I think advertising on especially, which is only a slither of our revenue, but especially on performance marketing channels, has become so expensive that something like this is more cost effective and the customers like it more. It's a kind of win-win. If our price point though was, the Verbo Airbnb price point, I don't know that we could do that. But we're also not, our average, we're very open with it. Our average kind of order value is $4,500 US dollars. So it's not some kind of, crazy amount that makes it work.
You've talked about rich data and collecting rich data, and certainly data from reviews is very rich. And I talk about this a lot when we're looking about how to design a guest experience. How does AI play into all this? Let's move on over to this whole new world for many people of AI. How is it playing a role not only in your home acquisition strategy, but also in developing the guest experience?
Okay, so maybe I'll give you a little bit of background of how we started Plum and what happened. So when we started the business, the way we'd select a home is by sending we call them home critics into the home. They would show up with they are hospitality trained people. They tend to work for hotels. They show up at the home with an iPad app. They collect 500 data points about the home. They measure the decibel levels in every room. They measure the shower pressure, the Wi-Fi speed. They interview the host, and then they give it a pass or fail mark with commentary. We arrived. We go to 6 locations. Incredible NPS. Super fans recommending us. When to go? Okay, now we want to scale this into every town, city, or village, and realized just how prohibitively expensive it was going to be, even though we don't manage the home, even though, just that building, that the army of critics globally. So we went on a mission of really automating as much of that process as possible. And I want to say the initial ones, almost by coincidence, the things that made huge leaps in how fast we can automate had to do with using AI, either kind of machine learning or generative AI in key parts of the process, and replacing what used to be a human element. So I can give you a couple of examples. Design really matters to Plum. We have this design Bible, which is like an 100-page book on what, and I can pop over and show you one, but what makes a Plum design home. And someone would manually go listing by listing digitally and say, this is Plum design, this is not, before we send the tester through. We built a model that is able to do that with 97% match rate with our creative director. So if you now gave 100 homes to our AI and 100 homes to our creative director, they would be 97% aligned on which homes are Plum quality and which aren't. And the reason I like that is because, in the typical view, this is a creative endeavor, the design element. And the way, I can only explain partially how it works. I mean, what happens is that we took a model, we fed it millions of homes that we had manually vetted as pass or failed, and said, try to learn the patterns that you notice here. And now here's 100 homes, do the same again. And we iterated over time till it got to that level. I can explain how. But we don't fully understand how it's doing it, by the way. We don't understand what the machine is learning, that it's identified these patterns or those patterns. So that's one example.
Yes, we'll have another one.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, look at the other end of the spectrum. So there's the AI on the quality element. Maybe I'll talk about the end of it, and happy to talk about the middle as well. But at the end of that, as I was saying, our critics would write a critical assessment of the home. Today, we take all that data we ingested about the home, and we've built a model that writes the listing for us, including, if you go on our listings, you will see the home truths. You will see the description about the home. You will see the highlights where we say what we think is great about the home. It is built on ChatGPT, and it ingests all the data that we have about the home to write it. Our copywriters still have a role, so they will spend 10 to 15 minutes per listing editing it. It's not strong enough to be allowed to just run, but the listings convert better and have higher NPS. The ones that have had AI produce the first draft of the listing.
Could you just explain NPS, please, for those who would be asking?
And NPS is it stands for Net Promoter Score. It's a question where you ask customers how likely you are to recommend a brand on a 1 to 10 scale. And I must confess that back in the day, I actually read the book of the guy who came up with it, which was dull but useful. And there's this guy called Frederick Reichheld, and he studied what questions you can ask customer correlate with future revenue growth. And he'd identified that this question, how people answered that, correlated with how much the brand was going to grow 3 years after that. And it became the accepted most important question to ask customers about how satisfied they are.
That's great. I'm going to add NPS to my list of acronyms. It took me a long time to actually pluck up the courage to ask somebody what OTA meant years ago.
Yeah, we try to have little acronyms at Plum, and I end up telling people not to have them. So interesting, I'm using them as well. But yeah.
So this sounds all great, but going back to homeowners, because this was my thing, trying to get the homeowners that were going to be the best for our company. Are you able to use AI in evaluating the homeowners that come along with the properties?
Yes, but indirectly. So what happens in effect is, if you look at evaluating the quality of the home and the owner, the way that works is we've trained the model by going, here's physical tests that we've done where we've gone into the home, we've interviewed the owner. Here's the data on those 50,000 homes, let's say. And on those 50,000 homes, here's every digital signal we can find about those homes. So all the photography, every review ever written, the number of Instagram followers, how quickly they respond to things. Now, can you identify from all these digital points markers that tell us how likely they are to pass the test? And then we do it on a new collection of homes to teach, to see if it can identify those things. And we occasionally send people into it to train the model, to say, you were right here, you were wrong here, you were right here, you were wrong here. What the model is able to tell us today with pretty decent accuracy is, do we think the service standards are Plum quality? What it cannot tell us is yes, but look out for 1, 2, 3, or yes or no, but if the owner is willing to get a management company to manage it, they are fantastic, which we used to have that nuance. But it amazes me that it's not quite fully there yet, but that an AI today that we build is almost as effective at telling the quality of a home as someone who has worked at the Four Seasons who shows up for 3 hours to vet a home. Almost. It's not there, but it's getting closer and closer and closer with time. And we're at the foothills of this journey. So I can only imagine where 2-3 years down the line we will be in terms of that accuracy.
I'm sure you have imagined where you're going to be 2 or 3 years down the line. What do you see as the future for this industry as a whole with AI?
I mean, I don't know that I have the most original stuff to say. Where the things that I'm most excited about is obviously the level of curation being incredible and accurate, and being able to tell very quickly whether a home is a good quality or not, and surface what's not great about it. And the second thing is matching people. I mean, the bits that we are really excited about, we're starting to play with, is the ability to have a conversation with a computer. So I think this idea of saying, we will look back very soon and say, oh, putting dates and number of bedrooms will look so archaic. Because really what you want to say is, we're looking to go, we're looking to go to Mallorca. I want my own quiet space. I want, the kids are going to leave home soon. So I want them to want to stay in the house. I don't want them to go partying all the time. I want it to be a fun place. They're going to bring their friends. We need entertainment. We want to host everybody. We want to cook a chef. And being able to write these long descriptions and being like, yep, here's the 3 homes that you can do exactly that. And the core is, if you have very good data about the homes, I think that's coming pretty soon, if the data is large and consistent between the homes. So I'm very excited about being able to do that. And then those are the big ones. Then you see all sorts of fun stuff. I mean, there's the team of Google Labs just continuously releasing iterations of, they have this, I'm happy to send it to you, this kind of models where they're taking static images of a home and through AI pacing them together to create a fly through of the home. So and it looks amazing. I mean, you get a real sense of a home very quickly, as if you're in it, but you haven't had to send a drone into the home or an expensive device. So there's lots of kind of stuff around the edges like that, but what I'm really excited about is curation and better expectation management, better matching between guest and home.
Yeah, looking back on the times that I was going out and seeing 300 homes a year and taking a Matterport camera and each one taking 2 hours to do, all the staging and the photos right the way through the house. That sounds, yeah. I mean, I did sell my company last year, but part of me misses it. Not a lot, actually, but it's sort of missing. What I'm missing is what's to come, and how much different it will be as we head into the not so distant future. And you were talking about people writing down what they want, but they're going to be able to just speak it, aren't they? The voice desire for my next vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's coming. For it to be as good as a local area expert is harder. You can hear a matchmaker sometimes ask guests, they'll have 2 people in on a Zoom, their partners or husband and wife or whatever, and they'll ask them, okay, tell me about your dream day. What does that look like? And they'll ask the other one, tell me about your dream day. To get to a position where a machine is doing that as soulfully as another human and make you feel as good about it in the end as a human is still a while away, but in some ways, the machine will do some of those things better pretty quickly.
Exactly. I want to step back once again to reviews, because I read a quote of yours when you said, if reviews killed the terrible experience, AI will kill the mediocre one. Can you tell us a bit more about the power of AI to spot that mediocrity?
It really comes from the observation that I mentioned before, which is here we are, almost to our surprise, having a machine ingesting a bunch of digital signals about a home. So the listing, the reviews, all of the photography, everything we can see about it, the response rate, and it is somehow able to do almost as accurate a decision as an expert in the home, almost. And so it does make you think, gosh, like it really is effective at spotting the exceptional. We've trained it to do that. Someone else would train it to do, and don't forget, we have a very specific definition of exceptional, whether discerning, traveler, urban dweller, loves. So someone else could train it for something else. But if it can do that, then I suspect tools will develop across the board to help people do that, and it will really surface what's fantastic. I have no doubt that, look, at most marketplaces design the review system to put positive reviews because they want to help the whole market go up. But the flip side of that is they find it hard to help the customer decide. These tools will make it easier for people, I think, to help the customer decide. So I think it will kill the mediocre experience.
Well, that is great. So this has been a great conversation. I just want to finish off by voicing the question that I'm sure a lot of the listeners are thinking at the moment. So I wonder if my home's eligible for the Plum Guide. So we're sort of going back a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to explain some of the design standards and expectations that you have. I don't want them sitting there thinking, oh no, I'm not going to achieve this standard, but without knowing some of them, this might sort of head them in your direction.
So I'll say a couple of things. First of all, just to be aware. So when we open a market, our goal is to vet every home in that market and accept roughly the top 3 to 4% of homes at 3 price points, at a medium, high, and luxury price point. We have a big collection that's at a more affordable scale because our customers book in these 3 price points. So not everything looks like an architectural masterpiece. It has to be the best in that category for sure. But I would mention on that in terms of what the design specifics are. At what level do I answer that question? I mean, it can get like very. I'll bring one if you're interested to see in a second. But it gets very granular in terms of take the living room. For us, it's really important that if a home is for 8 people, there's an 8-person social space where 8 people can sit and connect. The furniture design, the lighting has to look like it all fits together and sits together. It gets very specific, but I would summarize it really by just saying it's thoughtful design. If you have spent time thinking, oh, how do I want this to look? How do I want this to feel? If you found yourself opening and closing the front door and moving the vase a bit to the left, or because you feel like that makes a nicer experience, your home is probably Plum. And if unsure, if you go to plumguide.com, at the become a host on the top right-hand corner, you can submit your house in 60 seconds or your collection of homes, depends if you're on a channel manager. And very quickly, we will come back with a confirmed yes, no, or yes, but just these homes. So if in doubt, give it a go.
Well, I'll put a link to the Plum Guide on the show notes for anybody who wants to go take a look. And I think you should. I see Canada is missing.
Our COO is Canadian as well, who's not happy about it. Yes, I mean, we're now, look, we were expanding very slowly until we alighted on this AI thing. We're now really speeding that up. We're very focused on Europe, but we are not very far away from scaling North America. Canada is a big guest market for us. The US is our biggest guest market. We're heading there.
Oh, for sure. Let me know when you do. I know a lot of properties that
we have to speak to you, actually. I mean, we also, for us, it's choosing the right neighborhoods to get homes in, and so we'll work with local experts to help us understand the market. And if you're happy to take our call, I'd love to give you a call when the time comes.
I think that this part of the world is pretty much undiscovered, except by quite a large number of celebrities.
In which case, it's coming to the rest of us very soon.
Yes, indeed. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything you feel we haven't covered here?
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't think I've got anything else.
Well, it has been a pleasure, and it's not just the Plum Guide itself, but it's the way that you're integrating AI that I find particularly interesting. Because as I said at the very outset, I'm still talking to people who say, "Oh yes, that ChatGPT thing, I really should take a look at it." Oh my, you have not even looked at it yet. I mean, I've always considered myself an early adopter, and I was on it from day one. But there are those who've perhaps thinking it's it's a passing a passing phase and won't be of any use to them. As your parting shot, what would you say to the people who are perhaps sitting on the fence about this new thing?
Honestly, I mean, it really depends. If it's, I mean, what I'd say to everyone is have a play because it's really easy and you can go on and you can have a play. And if you're part of an organization and you've not done anything in it, ask if and you have some engineering or data science resource, take any kid who's into it and say, do you want to start playing for our company? You'll be amazed what they can do. And if something starts to take off, you can then expand it. So I just say have a play. But I would say as well, like I think if you are in the craft of, hospitality, I don't know that and what I mean by that is welcoming the guest, preparing the home, thinking about your standard operating procedures. I don't think that it's the kind of thing that is going to make or break your business actually at all. I think tools will come that you can buy and plug in, and that's okay. You don't need to be the pioneer of it because what's there is your craft, which is in the end really the only thing that matters. We're sort of the less important ones on the top. It's the do you have a beautiful space and make people feel amazing in it, and that's not very much to do with AI, I would say.
Absolutely, and that's a great point to end on. You have a beautiful space and it makes people feel amazing. That's what this business should always be about.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thanks for having me, Heather. Really appreciate it.